negatively impacted the Chinese American community with devastating consequences. Many Chinese Americans live in fear of their personal safety and dread the idea that the two countries, the United States and China, are getting closer to a real war. But in so many ways, war is already happening to them here in the United States. In 2020-2021, anti-Asian hate crimes increased by 150%. To this date, hate crimes have not abated, especially in large cities like New York and San Francisco. In a 2024 report from Axios, 1 out of 3 Asians have been a victim of hate incident. 59% of Asians believe they will be a victim of a hate incident within the next 5 years. In a new twist of sensationalism and China bashing, the Washington Post accused Chinese American communities of helping China to extend repression into American cities. On September 3rd of this year, or 3 weeks ago, a Washington Post article claims that last year's Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, known as APEC, members of the Chinese American community helped China to export transnational repression into American cities. The Post falsely accused the Chinese American community groups who came out to welcome President Xi to San Francisco as being aggressors in confrontations with anti-China protesters, and that they did it under the direction of the Communist Party of China. The Post further alleges that it is all part of Chinese government's shadowy plot to quash dissident Hong Kong and Tibetan voices overseas. What really happened was the opposite. At the APEC conference, members of the Chinese American community, including myself, went to welcome President Xi to San Francisco. We were already lined up informally to catch a glimpse of President Xi when members of the Hong Kong Democracy Council and students for a free Tibet entered the scene with tall flags and anti-China posters. They barged in and pretended to be victims, crying, "Don't touch me, don't touch me," when no one was touching them. These two organizations have been long-time beneficiaries of U.S. taxpayers' money, with hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant money from NED, National Endowment for Democracy, an offshoot of CIA for doing anti-China work in the United States. At the scene, these dissident groups use tactics consistent with those used in the 2019 Hong Kong riots. They simply brought those tactics here to the United States. They were the ones who transported repression to the United States against the Chinese American community. The tactics used in this demonstration were basically a toned-down version of Hong Kong, only without thousands of rocks, umbrellas, and firebombs that they used in Hong Kong, which would get them shot dead on the spot by the US police, unlike the Hong Kong police. But the lies of the aggressors faking being the victims came from the same mode. The mainstream media here, like some of the ones in Hong Kong, was completely biased and continued to frame the rioters as peaceful protesters, taking their word and ignoring evidence to the contrary. In developing a story against the Chinese American community, astoundingly, the Washington Post employed facial recognition to surveil Chinese American community members. Facial recognition is a faulty, imperfect method of providing evidence that is largely banned by courts. It is what experts call a science without forensics. Interestingly, the Washington Post itself published an article in 2019 claiming that facial recognition is unreliable as it contains biases and errors. Chinese and African men are likely to be misidentified 100 times more than whites. Many states and cities, including San Francisco, have banned the use of facial recognition technology by their government departments. It is a scary thought that the US mainstream media is turning into a foresight police state in the US-China Cold War. And by the way, the Post never reported that the only person being arrested on the scene by the San Francisco police and charged by the district attorney with numerous counts of serious felonies for beating up and seriously injuring a member of the Chinese American community was one of those anti-China demonstrators. Members of the Chinese American community who went to welcome President Xi were mostly older retired Chinese Americans who wanted to be a part of the historic moment when the two presidents, Xi and Biden, met in San Francisco. The summit meeting represented a hope of peace between the two countries, a peace that would de-escalate the new Cold War and demonization of China, which produces much of anti-Asian hate in this country. What they were doing was to show respect for the meeting of the two presidents and hope for a better future for them and for America. They were then not to transport repression from China. They don't even know what that was all about. We were living in a renewed McCarthy period, and in some ways it is even worse. The demonization of Chinese Americans as a tool of repression upon the United States is another Cold War strategy to drive American people's hate towards China and thus give consent to war with China. The post-use of facial recognition technology to surveil Chinese Americans is also a step up in the cracking down on all forms of peace advocacy, whether it be black, Uyghur-free tribe, or protesting in war, white pro-pain, women protesting genocide in Gaza, whom Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi said, go back to China, or young university students being arrested and banned from returning to university for protesting Gaza, or Chinese American scientists being arrested under Trump's China initiative. We need to stand together to fight back against the tyranny of the media and unjust US policies that will lead us to war. Advocating for world peace is now more important than ever. Thank you very much.
And next, I have the honor of introducing someone who I've known for more than a few minutes and I greatly respect. And that's Sharon Black. She's the East Coast coordinator of Struggle La Lucha, who's going to be talking about no war on China, what every worker should know. Give it up for Sharon.
I'm worried about dropping this thing. Long live the Chinese Revolution! Long live China! Free, free Palestine! Long live Lebanon! Thank you to the organizers of this event to mark the 75th anniversary of China's earth-shaking revolution, which broke the chains of feudal slavery and imperialist domination. Under the leadership of Mao Zedong, widely known as Chairman Mao, the Communist Party of China achieved what many deemed impossible. The revolution brought to end China's century of humiliation, which began with the British imperialists' First Opium War in 1839. Over the past 75 years, there has been incredible progress for the masses in China's working class. In 2012, China's President Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, vowed to eradicate extreme poverty. In 2020, despite the additional challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the Chinese government proudly proclaims peace. And I raise this first because I come from Baltimore City, a city where 25% of the people live in poverty. People lay in the streets. People are homeless. And just last night I was in Harlem, and the same situation exists there. Extreme poverty in the West. They could do something about it, but we'd rather spend trillions on the war budget. China is now a world scientific power. It has built high-speed trains and affordable electric cars, reduced pollution and carbon emissions, and engaged in space exploration. The People's Republic of China's accomplishments have spanned the gamut from healthcare to education and sports. Belt and Road Initiative, but time doesn't allow it. So I just wanted to say, revolutionary change and the struggles of the working class don't happen in isolation. International events and global pressures influence them. The same applies to the material conditions that shape them. But the Communist Party of China and the Chinese working class have faced, whether through external or internal pressures, trade wars, attempts at dismemberment, military threats, or hot war can best be described as a global class war. The struggle primarily pits U.S. imperialism against the working class worldwide, especially in countries intent on building socialism and liberating themselves from imperialist control. The orientation of U.S. monopoly capitalism has not for 1 minute had a hands-on policy towards China, and for that matter, the rest of the world. They are for intervention everywhere. It's important to underscore that in the decades preceding the success of the 1949 revolution, the United States military and government were already playing a role in attempting to defeat the Chinese Communist revolutionaries by supplying arms to the reactionary Kuomintang. Both the bloody Korean and Vietnam wars were equally about containing, encircling, and strangling China, along with defeating the liberation aspirations of the Korean and Vietnamese people. The Pentagon visited unfathomable destruction of both Northern Korea and Vietnam, bombed North Korea to rubble, and engaged in carpet bombing and deforestation in Vietnam. An estimated 2.5 million Koreans lost their lives, and the estimated deaths of Vietnamese range from 1 to 3 million. The people of both the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the Socialist Republic of Vietnam successfully moved heaven and earth to rebuild. The 1989 reactionary Tiananmen Square so-called student rebellion, characterized as a massacre by the West and later exposed as a lie, might possibly be described as a much earlier attempt. Failed as it was, at color revolution, the name given to Western-backed attempts to that regime change started with the Rose Revolution in the country of Georgia in 2023. Throw in the Dalai Lama and the CIA-led Tibetan independence movement in the Falun Gong project, and you can see the pattern of lies meant to turn all manner of sympathy against the CPC and direct their efforts to dismember the People's Republic of China. The key to China's ability to hold off counter-revolution and to weather imperialist schemes is that the Chinese Communist Party and its government, backed by the People's Liberation Army, have continued to hold state power in the name of the working class. China continues to have a planned economy based on state-owned infrastructure. The present decade has brought bigger challenges. The maneuvers by U.S. imperialism have been increasingly more dangerous and point in the direction of a hot war centered around Taiwan. The U.S. NATO proxy war against Russia and the increasing regional war in Western Asia, with Palestine as its central flashpoint, should be seen as one. What undergirds and fuels this crisis is the contraction of monopoly capitalism. More than ever, the U.S. economy relies less on production for use and more on spending and development for what is commonly called the military-industrial complex. The capitalist banking system is intertwined with these developments. It is a superfuel for inflation and deepening impoverishment of the broader working class, making larger war inevitable. When the thesis on imperialism is more important than ever, the drive towards war is independent of political administrations or individual intentions, regardless of how venal or corrupt. As the global capitalist crisis deepens, the U.S. imperialist system is propelled towards rival war. Our role in the belly of the beast is clear. The global working class, including U.S. workers who increasingly embody a diverse collection of nations, must be united in solidarity with the working class of China. The vast majority of the people of the United States have nothing in common with the multi-trillion-dollar bankers and war profiteers who are promoting the war buildup against China. Struggle to Lucha, soon-to-be-published book, The U.S. War Drive Against China, What It Means for Workers, is an effort to expose the increasing danger of the U.S. war against China and to reveal the real enemies of the working class. Hands off China! Down with U.S. imperialism! And I'd like to end in the words of Che Guevara: the revolution is not an apple that falls when it's ripe. You have to make it fall, and that is our job, to make it fall.
All right, it's now my honor to introduce Dee Knight. And I've been waiting to introduce them. Still a friend of mine, an old comrade. I think I have an autographed copy of a book by you somewhere at home. But anyways, Dee, come on up here. And Dee is a DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America International Committee's China-Asia Subcommittee member. And he's going to be speaking right up here.
Thank you.
And he's going to be talking about defending China against U.S. and NATO aggression. Give a big hand to Dee.
I'd like to start by thanking Chinese leadership for its unconditional solidarity with Palestinian liberation and continuous efforts to stop Israeli slaughter and apartheid. I'd also like to thank Li Xiuping from the China-U.S. Solidarity Committee, who was our guide in Xinjiang last November, so we can witness for ourselves there is no slavery or oppression there. I want to dedicate this talk to my friends Terry Klug and John Kalinauer, who devoted much of their youth to organizing active duty U.S. soldiers and sailors through the American Servicemen's Union. John later wrote Turning the Guns Around, a political memoir of this experience. I recommend it. And Terry devoted much of the rest of his life to regular labor union work. I knew them for their work in the resistance, which I shared. It's also good to take this opportunity to highlight the inestimably powerful contribution Malcolm X made to forging anti-imperialist consciousness among the entire U.S. population, but especially among African American youth, which inspired the Black Panther Party, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and many other formations which were key factors in the development of a movement that helped stop the U.S. war against Vietnam. I was born in 1946, last century, just days after the U.S. dropped the first nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and 3 years before Chairman Mao declared in Tiananmen Square that China has stood up. Very soon, a hysteria raged in Washington, D.C. over who lost China. Almost immediately, General Douglas MacArthur launched plans to invade or bomb the new revolutionary republic before it could start its socialist transformation. But during the so-called Korean War, which was also specifically aimed at China, U.S. war efforts were stymied by 500,000 Chinese volunteers. General MacArthur called for nuking China, but failed to get a green light for his vicious plan. Nevertheless, U.S. hostility continued and nearly boiled over several times in the 1950s. And when the U.S. anti-communist crusade shifted elsewhere in Asia, to both Vietnam and Indonesia, China was also always in its crosshairs, and China responded with anti-imperialist solidarity. China consistently and constantly wages peace through its Belt and Road Initiative and many other amazing efforts to share with its neighbors across the global south. So it has many more friends than enemies, while the U.S. constantly wages war to sustain its domination of the world. Today, as the U.S. conducts endless aggressive war plans against China, arming Taiwan and deploying special forces troops there in violation of its promise to respect the One China principle, deploying a vast armada of warships in the East and South China Seas, extending NATO to East Asia, forcing Japan to rearm while deploying nuclear submarines and missiles in South Korea, Okinawa, and the Philippines, the danger of hot war against China is greater than ever. The people of these countries have been mobilizing and protesting constantly against U.S. efforts to use them as proxies in wars against China. It's very much like the cynical way that Biden, Blinken, and Victoria Nuland contrived to overthrow a Ukrainian government that had a peaceful relationship with Russia, replacing it with a fascist cabal that is now used as a battering ram in a proxy war against Russia. The devastating cost in Ukrainian and Russian lives has been overwhelming, as has the damage to other countries the U.S. has bludgeoned into helping in this criminal enterprise, which has brought the world to the brink of World War III. The same or worse devastation looms now as U.S. aggression proceeds, with huge joint U.S.-South Korean war games using nuclear-armed fighter bombers, missiles, and nuclear submarines, and constant warship sparring in the South China Sea, in which the U.S. Navy uses Filipinos as proxies while reestablishing massively armed U.S. bases in the Philippines, just south of Taiwan and Hong Kong. The people of Japan, especially those in Okinawa, are subjected to non-stop danger and devastation resulting from U.S. military occupation. People in these countries have mobilized continuously against being used as proxies in aggressive U.S. war preparations against China. They are natural allies of the American peace movement as we plan to oppose and stop the U.S. war machine. They have a real need to appeal to the tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers and sailors who are stationed at military bases near their homes. In the Philippines, the popular mass movement was successful in the early 1990s in forcing the U.S. to withdraw from its bases on their soil. We know they want to force the U.S. out again, just as the people of Okinawa and South Korea want to end the hell of U.S. military occupation, which constantly endangers the local population with outrages that are never controlled or punished. We also know that many of the U.S. soldiers and sailors themselves are aware of the danger they face as cannon fodder or sitting ducks for U.S. war plans. We need to find ways to help these young people resist and say no to their unjust fate, just as happened back in the days of the U.S. war against Vietnam. These young people can take inspiration from the incredible courage of Aaron Bushnell, who sacrificed his own life rather than allow himself to be used for U.S.-backed genocide against the Palestinians. It's worth noting that Bushnell specifically was refusing to be part of U.S. military Air Force orders to help Israel target their murder victims from satellites and from the air, just as has happened recently in Lebanon. It's also, we also need to be aware of the growing number of U.S. government employees who have resigned rather than participating in this monstrous genocidal lie. We need to encourage more of that. Desertion, resistance, resignation, refusal. The people of this and we can do it. We can stop the U.S. war machine and bring peace. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce at this point Radikai Desai, who's the convener of the International Manifesto Group, who's going to be appearing online and is going to be talking about the success of China in the geopolitical economy of the capitalist world. Here it is.
Honoring me with their invitation to be part of this World Historic celebration. I have titled my remarks The Successes of China in the Geopolitical Economy of the Capitalist World. On the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the proclamation of the People's Republic of China, there is so much to celebrate. One is spoiled for choice. China's economic, social, technological, cultural, and foreign policy achievements are just too numerous. However, one major lacuna in our appreciation of them is how it fits into Marxism. After all, the proliferation of revolutions in the developing world is often held to be a negation of what Marxist theory allegedly predicted. So, in my brief remarks, I suggest that it only appears so because Western Marxism has lost any connection to Marx's original analysis, an analysis we can recover. Not only did the PRC represent the arrival of socialism in the world's biggest country, not only did it endure against great odds, which included not being recognized by the world's most powerful imperialist country for some 3 decades after the revolution, wars being conducted on its borders, sanctions, and the tragic split with its previously most powerful supporter. Not only has the PRC completed 75 years, something that most powerful supporter of the Soviet Union failed to do. Not only has it done so with no sign of exhaustion, but rather with the vigor of a society which, rather than resting on its laurels, has set itself new goals worthy of socialism. China's socialist successes underline the historic necessity of socialism for humanity, just as Marx and Engels had predicted, and they accelerated. This becomes clear if, unlike so much Western Marxism, which has compromised with neoclassical economics and become blind to capitalism's contradictions, and thus also to its imperialism, we view the Chinese Revolution and its achievements in the geopolitical economy of capitalism. It is a historical and materialist understanding of the international relations of the capitalist world, the relations of producing nations, as Marx called them. This approach emerges from Marx's understanding of capitalism as contradictory value production. In it, imperialism and resistance against it are as important as class struggle in driving history forward, in driving humanity forward to socialism, or, as Mao put it, national struggle is a distinct version of class struggle. In this analysis, Third World Socialist revolutions were definitely among the possible openings to socialism. It is no coincidence that the socialist aperture opened with the 30 Years' crisis of capitalism and imperialism that lasted from 1914 to 1945, with the 2 most important socialist revolutions to date bookending it in 1917 and 1949. In Marx's analysis, capitalism had by then already reached the point, the monopoly phase, when it had exhausted the historically progressive potential it ever had and become ripe for socialism. A point which was underlined by Lenin when he said that capitalism had already reached its highest phase or high stage at this point. Not only did capitalism require the imperialist subordination and underdevelopment of much of the world to get to this point, from here on, the only way any sustained or lasting development could be had was through socialist means. Capitalism was not going to prove capable of absorbing any new entrants in its charmed circle. And it has not. A simple map of the country sanctioning Russia over the Ukraine conflict makes clear that the imperialist world for which it is a proxy has not expanded, other than acquiring some minor hangers-on since 1914. That is not all. The most successful periods of development that third world countries have known have been the ones of state-led socialist or socialist-oriented development, and definitely not the ones implementing neoliberal policies imposed by the West. This is also why the socialist urge has been so irrepressible, despite the most strenuous efforts of the imperialist world. Looked at this way, what becomes clear is that humanity embarked on the road to socialism in 1917, with the Russian Revolution enduring the suppression of the wave of revolutions that broke out at that time. Of course, the path to socialism, once taken, was never going to be without its difficulties and mistakes. This was clear not only in the developmental difficulties endured by the Soviet Union, but also from the mistakes made by its leadership in its support of other revolutions, not least the Chinese, and from the fact that the pioneering revolution did not in the end make it. However, 1989 and 1991 were not the end of socialism, as so many in the West seem to believe, nor even the beginning of its end. But as Carlos Martinez has so insightfully put it, only the end of the beginning of socialism. The People's Republic of China's onward march, its remarkable successes, and in particular its widening and deepening advances on the technological frontier underline that capitalism, which briefly thrived in the decades after the Second World War only thanks to socialistic gains in welfare state reforms in its homelands, has since sunk into a neoliberal funk of low growth, low investment, technological failure, financialized speculation and predation, and militarism, and can no longer advance humanity on any front, and cannot even develop the forces of production. The great achievement of the People's Republic of China, perhaps an instance of the success of the Second Coming, is that it can now lead humanity towards the socialism that Marx and Engels long ago identified as humanity's destiny. Thank you very much.
And I can't stress enough that we appreciate each and every person who is speaking at this event and who has made contributions to it. So, again, give it up for our fine speakers. All right, so we've gotten to the point where I'm going to be saying a few words about the decline of U.S. imperialism and war preparations against China. Comrades, friends, distinguished guests, we are gathered here today for an event of genuine importance, and I would like to extend our gratitude to the Friends of Socialist China and to Workers' World Party for making this happen. Like Margaret, I would also like to thank Crichton for all the work that went into this project. Really, this is an astounding success that was put together by many, many people, and we thank each and every one of you. For the past 75 years, the People's Republic of China, under the able leadership of the Communist Party, has accomplished so much for so many. From Mao Zedong's proclamation in 1949, the Chinese people have stood up right up until the present moment. China has set an example of everything from attacking poverty, a real war on poverty, not like the fake ones they have here in the U.S., to implementing green technology. It really is astounding. China has been showing the way. And greater things lie ahead. At the most recent party congress, Communist Party of China's chairman Xi Jinping, I'm sorry I'm starting to talk too fast, stated, all of us in the party must stay true to our fundamental purpose of serving the people wholeheartedly and maintain a people-centered mindset and carry out the mass line. And later in the speech he noted, the party has made spectacular achievements through its great endeavors over the past century, and our new endeavors will certainly lead to more spectacular achievements. And I think I certainly speak for all of us, each and every one here, in wishing the People's Republic of China many more victories on its 75th birthday. And that includes hoping for a speedy and successful conclusion of the last unfinished piece of business in the Chinese Revolution, and that's reunification with Taiwan province. features the international situation, especially U.S. hostility towards People's China, including economic and military measures undertaken by the White House and Pentagon, and in the context which these measures are being taken. And specifically that context I'm talking about is the decline of American imperialism. The U.S. has an empire that spans the globe, but it's an empire in decline as many basic economic measures show. The U.S. share of the world GDP since World War II has been halved. The fall of the U.S. steel industry is an illustration of this. The plurality of U.S. steel in the world was, in 1955, was about 45% was produced in the U.S. Today it's fallen to about 5%, and the U.S. is a net steel importer. In fact, China produces about 12 times more steel than the U.S., just to go off script here a little bit. Contrast this with socialist China. Using the measure of purchasing power parity, which is used to compare commodities against a given currency, the World Bank has concluded the Chinese economy is 23% larger than the United States economy. China produces twice the electricity of the United States, 3 times the autos. It has a shipbuilding capacity of more than 200 times that of the United States. The economy of the People's Republic of China has continually grown, and due to the superiority of socialism, it has never experienced a single economic crisis due to overproduction, and that's an absolute fact. The PRC is emerging as a major force in the world economy. The U.S. response to this change in place has been significant. For all practical purposes, the United States has abandoned the drive to put together large-scale, multilateral trade agreements. For example, I don't think there's been any motion on such since the Doha agreements failed in 2008. It's been a long time. Likewise, the United States invested a huge amount of time and energy in putting together the World Trade Organization. Many of us here put a lot of time and energy into opposing it, but the fact of the matter is, the United States is the one that today is blocking it from functioning by refusing to appoint judges to the appeal process that deals with the basically trade tariffs. The United States has moved from once being a champion of free trade to now being a practitioner of protectionism. In the context of declining empire, the United States is moving to delink its economy from China, and the Biden administration is following in the footsteps of Trump. A few weeks ago, on Friday the 13th, an unlucky day, the White House announced tariffs, 100% on electric vehicles imported from China. Tariffs have been put on or placed on many more Chinese-made products, be they steel, lithium batteries, or even much-needed personal protection devices to help prevent the spread of COVID and other diseases. Tons of tariffs. In addition, the United States has abandoned its traditional neoliberal economic model insofar as capital investment goes, and has adopted an industrial policy here in the U.S. and is restricting capital flows to China. And I can go into more details about that. People can ask me about it. So what about war preparations and our tasks? For those of you who are readers of bourgeois foreign policy journals, I am, I think Sarah Founders is too. What we see in them is debates that are really incredible. For example, will a war, this is like foreign affairs, right? Will a war with China be long, or will it be short? That's the kind of things they're debating in foreign affairs right now. And this indicates that we have a problem. The Pentagon has made it clear that China is its #1 priority. And basically what it's doing is putting together an alliance of hostile forces, a hostility towards China together in the Pacific region, and these alliances are formal and informal. The U.S. is getting ready to deliver, at this point in time, its biggest ever military package to China, the greatest ever. People's China wants peace, and the U.S. is on a path towards war. The implications of this are huge, and the tasks of revolutionaries and progressive people in this country is cut out for us. We need to oppose each and every U.S. war. We need to stand with the oppressed, from Palestine to the Philippines, and we need to stand with the socialist countries, stand in solidarity with China. It's an absolute necessity. The People's Republic of China is making the world a better place.
That's for sure.
The United States, with its ally Israel, is practicing genocide. The choice is clear. We have a common enemy in the monopoly capitalists that rule the United States.
Yeah.
By standing together as one, the peoples of the world have a bright future. And I'm wrapping it up now. The peoples of the world have a bright future. Mao Zedong in 1956 noted, "Now, U.S. imperialism seems quite powerful, but in reality it isn't. It is very weak politically because it is divorced from the masses of people, and it is disliked by everyone, including the American people."
Yeah.
He said, "In appearance it is very powerful, but in reality it's nothing to be afraid of. It is a paper tiger. Outwardly a tiger, it's made of paper, unable to withstand the wind and rain." So in conclusion, away with the paper tiger, long live the unity of the peoples of the world, long live socialist China, and thank you very much. Happy 75 China. Because I'm going to introduce our final speaker. And I actually know the name of our final speaker, but I'm just going to make sure because we don't want to have two speakers because I know people are waiting for lunch. But it's Michael Waugh, going to be appearing online from Veterans for Peace, National Board of Veterans for Peace, and part of the China Working Group. So give it up for Michael Waugh.
The U.S. empire right now is at a critical moment. We're bogged down in Ukraine. It's a war of attrition that our empire cannot win and cannot sustain forever. Israeli tail is wagging the U.S. dog. It's about to drag us into a larger war in the Middle East. And likewise, we cannot win that war. The United States could not defeat Afghanistan or Iraq. Iran is 3 times the size of Iraq, both in population and in geographical size. China continues to surge ahead technologically, and we continue to try to provoke China into war, but it's a war that we cannot win. Not only that, as the United States continues to wage war after war on other nations, innocent nations in the global south, nations in the Middle East, Russia, China, and like sanctions on nation after nation, we alienate most of the world and we unite most of the world against us. The United States is trying to arm Taiwan. It's encouraging noises of declaring independence for Taiwan, escalating tensions between the two Koreas. It's joined South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Australia, and New Zealand as treaty allies. And it's bringing NATO forces into the Pacific region doing joint military exercises along the coast of China. It's formed alliances called AUKUS, the US, the UK, Australia, the Quad, India, Japan, Australia, and the US. It's developed a system called Link 16, which is a tactical military data link that it's a network basically connecting all of these nations together the same way NATO communicates and acts together as a whole in war games. But most of these war games show that even with all these forces, the US cannot win a conventional war with China. Chinese missiles, drones, aircraft, large modern navy, and other forces capable of defending itself and destroying even our combined forces. If we cannot win, what else can we do? Will we go nuclear? There has been some talk in high places about using a tactical nuclear weapon. But that risk wind straight up the nuclear escalation ladder. So we're in a very pivotal moment. The U.S. is stretched thin across the world, fighting a war in Ukraine, the Middle East. Now we're trying to drum up a war in Asia. We cannot sustain this, and yet we still seem determined to do it. In July of 2023, U.S. Air Force 4-star General Mike Minihan said, quote, "My gut tells me that we will fight in 2025. That's only a year from now. Less than a year in terms of months." Hillary Clinton once said, quote, "I don't want my grandchildren to live in a world dominated by the Chinese." We have this fear that either we dominate the world or someone else will dominate the world. That's a paradigm called the zero-sum game. Either you're the conqueror or you are the conquered. But all world empires have always proved unsustainable. In the end, they do exactly what we're doing now. They overreach. Everybody that they conquer resists. Eventually, they cannot maintain their empire, and they crash. That's exactly where we're heading. The next 2 to 5 years will be pivotal, as General Minihan said. My gut tells me we will fight in 2025. This means that we're approaching a critical period in the next 2 to 5 years in which either the empire will create World War III or the empire will have to slowly, step by step, give way. This is being accompanied by a McCarthy period at home where we have, white pink protesters protesting Gaza, being told by Nancy Pelosi, go back to China where your headquarters is, even though I don't think there's a connection to, taking orders from China. Like group, the Uyghur Free, have been tried for being connected to Russia. They've been around 50 years, and what they've been saying is the same thing that they've been saying for 50 years. They're not tools of Russia. They're their own independent political force, stating their own independent ideas. Chinese Americans who welcomed Xi Jinping at the APEC conference were accused of attacking Tibetan and Hong Kong protesters. But eyewitness reports said it's the opposite. So the empire is reaching a very critical time period. And it's very important that we continue the work that we are doing to protest and resist the empire. But we have to go beyond just protest, beyond just talking about what we don't want and what we fear. Beyond our fear, we need to look at a positive vision that the United States and the rest of the world could become if we chose a different course. China's vision of a multipolar world in which no single nation, not China, not the US, not Russia, or anyone else dominates, is a vision that not only China, but the global South, Russia, Iran, all of these countries are coming more and more to look at and accept as a positive vision that everybody can work together to reduce a better world. All nations have to cooperate if we want to survive global challenges such as climate change, pandemics, and prevent nuclear war. And if such a world came into being, a multipolar world in which no single nation dominates and all nations work together to mitigate global challenges, if we produce such a world, all nations and all people could prosper and thrive together. And the U.S. would be in a very good position. We're a large nation with good natural resources, advanced technology, an educated workforce, easily defended borders. If we got our act together and just behave like a normal nation, we could thrive in such a world. The It's very important to avoid World War III, promote a positive vision of the world we do want, and if we and the rest of the world together promote that vision, we can all live in a historic global turn towards the beginning of a better world. Let us be aware of our fears, let us talk about our fears, but let us also look beyond our fears and promote a positive vision that we can all move forward with. Thank you.
Beginning and an end, and this panel is over, but, and this is a big but, by 2 o'clock, we must be back in our seats. There's hundreds of online viewers, so we absolutely must be back in our seats by 2 o'clock, and people would be doing well if we try to do it 2 or 3 minutes before that. Thank you. Let's see.